Hello everybody, and thanks for checking out my review. Today I'll be going over the Casio Gshock. This is the GF1000 1DR. This is one of the newer designed Frogman watches from the Master of G series. And of course it comes in a plain black box with the Gshock logo. And of course the actual model on the back here with the module 3185 if you wanted to look up on Casio's website for the instruction manual. And opening up the box, you get a nice thick manual here. Like I said, 3185 on the module. It's so thick because, of course, they give you multiple languages, so it's not that rough of a module to learn. It's actually a pretty simple one to use. And, of course, opening up the inner box area here, you have a smaller tin than Casio's used to putting in there, so I guess they're going more minimalist on their containers, which is just fine. Of course, it's plain black. It's got a raised lettering on the outside and raised Gshock logo in the dead center. Opening up the tin, of course, you get the watch itself. And you know something? They kind of went in a classic way with the design, and when I say that, if you look at the very first generations of the Frogman watch that came out, they had that kind of U-shape outside of the buttons like this, and they went back to it. I think it's pretty sharp looking. It's two stainless steel buttons on the left side, and if you go on the right side, it's either, I'm thinking either aluminum or possibly plastic buttons on the right side here. They're larger than the other Frogman models that you've seen in the history of the line. I believe it's probably due to bigger buttons for gloves. And it does maintain, of course, the curve on the strap itself. It's pretty thick resin on the upper end here, and it's very, very comfortable flexibility on the actual wrist area. And of course they give you a black stainless steel. You get the old-timer Frogman logo there. I believe it's laser etched, it looks like. It's nice and smoothed out. And one thing about this version of the Gshock of the Frogman series is it's stainless steel. Previous generations that I saw are typically titanium, which is a lot lighter. When I opened this, I was very surprised at the weight. For a digital watch, it's pretty significant. I actually appreciate that in a diver watch. If you look at a lot of the analog watches that I've reviewed in the past, they're usually your larger stainless steel watches, so this was a pleasure to get. And if you look on the ring that's inside the resin here, it's got a brushed stainless steel on the outer area, and on the inner area it's a nice polished, like a gunmetal type of a finish. It's got a silver ring here for the seconds graph. It's got a moon phase and a tide graph on the sound signal for when you're pushing the buttons. You have, of course, and I'll try to get as close as I can here to the camera, it lets you know if the alarms are active. I usually keep the hourly time signal going there. And right below that, of course, you have the date, the day of the week, the time, which you can do in 12 and 24-hour format, the seconds. Below that, you have your battery meter, and it lets you know if it's in power save mode or not. And pressing the setting button, the adjust, you could change it to a second time zone as well. So very good design, and they actually changed the rivets on the upper and lower area here on the right side. The rivets are more of a Phillips head with 3 different areas rather than the old hex type of a type that they were using in the past. And of course a brushed and polished buckle here. Now, one thing I did want to make clear before I get into this review through the functions is I'm not a diver. I do like dive watches, and one particular function I did find really advantageous to divers is a dive mode. This keeps log records of the duration of each dive, and it holds up to 10 logs. So when you press the function button for 2 seconds, you'll notice it goes into a dive mode, and what ends up happening is the seconds graph becomes a minute graph. Of course, it gives you the current time, and it works as a stopwatch just in its own mode. So the seconds graph, it counts up in minutes, and it indicates dive time up to 24 hours. Now, the interval time counts minutes up to 48 hours. So just to clarify, dive time is the actual dive interval, counts from the stop of the last dive and the start of your next dive. The interval is shown in the log mode, not in the dive mode. I'll be getting into that momentarily, but it is shown in the newest log in that mode. Now, just to show you how this works, what you do is you press the start button right here, and it kicks off the timer. Now, what you're going to notice is the time, the current time continues to move, so it'll show as 9:40, 9:45. The 9:43 that's shown on the left side here, that's the time I started the dive. So basically that's going to stay halted, and when it goes into the logs, I know which log to look at, which is the most recent one. Now, again, the buttons are bigger. I'm going to say it's probably for gloves, and it, what ends up happening is when you press the button accidentally, it's not going to stop the timer. What you have to do is hold it for a second, and then it's going to stop it. Now, to press it again, it's going to resume it. And what's going to happen is if you want to reset the timer, you're going to press the adjust button up here, and it resets it, and now it's logged into the log menu. So to get out of the dive timer, you're going to press this for another 2 seconds, and when you go into the first mode, there's your log. Now, just to walk you through the rest of the functions here, like I said, you go into the first mode and it's going to give you your log times. Yeah, I logged it in there, and that was at 9:51 that I had put that in there, so that's going to keep counting up, like I said before, from up to 24 to 48 hours for the surface time. And then you can go into your other logs. As you can see, 9:51 was the time before that log, and you'll notice it gives you the date there, so you can count that down through all the dates of your most various logs. Now, to clear the logs out, you hold on to the adjust button for 3 seconds, and it's going to ask you to clear. You keep holding on to it, and it clears them all out there for you. Going into the tide graph, it starts at 6 a.m. and it gives you the moon phase, as you can see, and the different times of the day. It's going to show you what the tide's doing. So as you notice, you go through the different times and you're going to see the tide change throughout the day. You'll see where it's blinking. Of course, it's got world time, and it gives you 31 time zones and 48 cities. I always keep mine on LA because I do a lot of business on eBay and with people from out in California, so it's always good to know the time there. And then your next function is your alarm, which gives you, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4 different alarms. It gives you a snooze alarm and an hourly time signal, which I always keep on. And of course, it keeps the current time in the setting there as well. Got a 24-hour stopwatch and a 24-hour timer. Now, the nice thing about the timer is when you end up pressing for it to start, as you see it's counting down, it's telling you what you started it at. So if I know it's a 3-second timer there, a 3-minute timer rather. And that's the functions of the watch. Alright, so the next part of this review, I wanted to just go over comparisons because this is a larger size watch. It is obviously a larger display than the previous versions of the G-Shock Frogman, so I brought in the older Frogman for comparison purposes, so you can kind of get an idea of what the size difference would be. So if you notice, it's not ridiculously much larger than the previous version, but it is a bit larger. I would say it's thicker. And holding it up side by side, it will be a bit of a difference. It's noticeable enough, but not gargantuan, if you will. Speaking of which, I'll bring in the GX56, the King. And I would say that it's probably a little bit smaller than that, but because it's rounded, it doesn't look as large on the wrist, so it's got an easier wrist presence, if you will. And as you can see, the King is just about the same thickness there. And holding them up together here. But like I said, because it's rounded and not a square, I would say it does look a little bit smaller on the wrist. And of course the new version of the Mudman, which is actually pretty small compared to the new Frogman here. Probably about just as thick, maybe even about just about as thick. But you'll notice as far as wrist presence, the Frogman definitely takes it on that. And I'd say probably because of the wider band from the strap's lug area. And I always mention I'm left-handed, so I wear my watch on my right hand, and I will have 7.5-inch wrists, so you can kind of get an idea of how it sits. I like to keep it loose. And that's how it sits. So when I'm walking, the thing I always liked about the Frogman watches is the fact that it curves up towards the wrist, so it sits very comfortably. Very easy to read the time, of course. You'll never find these in the negative displays. But normally I keep it up here. And that's preliminarily the review on the GF1000. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for a moment. I'm going to show you the lume shot on the watch. And thank you very much for watching the review. I hope it was helpful, and have a great day. I always say, for more information on this watch and a lot of different G-Shocks and good discussion, go to www.watchuseek.com. And of course, I now have a Twitter account, so you can feel free to follow me at Twitter at DougFNJ. Or you can go to www.youtube.com/DougFNJ. Thanks again for watching, and I appreciate all the support.